Nothing happens with one vote. I mean, you are nothing without getting some collaboration from the community or from the council or whatever. As I get older, I recognize that I need to not be formulating answers when I should be listening. Respect the value of silence. Silence says something, so listen twice as much as what you speak. You don't get in trouble for listening, number one, as compared to speaking, where you could get into trouble. Sometimes you just have to say, no is a complete sentence, and that's the end of the conversation.
Welcome to Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities. I'm Dave Martin. With me, as always, is our co-host and the mayor of Dubuque, Brad Cavanagh. Brad, good to see you again. How you been?
It's nice to see you too, Dave.
It's nice.
I'm doing pretty well.
You're doing pretty well. And we were just at the National League of Cities conference in Washington, D.C., where we got to actually talk in person.
We did.
And you made me an honorary Iowan.
Well, that happened a long time ago. So yeah, you were already there.
I was already there?
It's just nice to see another Iowan there at the conference.
All right. Well, we were well represented at Iowa. There was a couple of Iowans on panels, and lots of folks came up to me. So Iowa was well represented. So who do we have with me today? Let's meet a new Iowan.
Well, today we have Mayor Tom Wieseler from Mount Vernon. So Tom, welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Glad to be on the show here, and I consider it a privilege.
Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Yes,
that's right.
The privilege is all ours. Now, the reason why you're a guest is because I was at the Iowa League of Cities conference in Des Moines this year, and you came over with notebook and pen in hand, sat down at my table and said, "Hi, nice to meet you. I always listen." So it's good to have a listener on. And what really impressed me was you always take time to listen to the show and you take notes. So what have you learned from the show? What are we doing right? What do we need to fix? So give us a little critique.
Well, I think it's in the Cityscape magazine from the League of Cities that it talked each issue last year, or probably the last 2 years, about who was on your show and how to get in touch with the podcast and so on. Okay. So at one point, I did go through literally all of those. I think I had 18. And episode 18, I think, was the last one that I saw.
All right.
It was, first of all, an opportunity to learn something about a city. Secondly, an opportunity to learn something about their city manager, mayor, whoever was representing the city on through the interview process. But third, I wanted to get one sentence or one bullet, one gem of information from each one of those.
Good. So how are we doing?
I've got them right in front of me here, so I can go back and you pick an episode. I can look it up and see who talked. And, yeah.
I don't know, Brownie. Are you as nervous as I am? I mean, let's go. Go ahead. Give us a couple of your highlights. Let's hear them. Let's hear them.
Okay, this is from Waukee, episode 4, about the importance of making a plan. And I use that one because of Courtney Clark is a member of the League of Cities, and also is the fastest growing city in the state. So I enjoyed listening to her about creating a structure for improving the lives of citizens. And I think the title of hers was like making a plan.
Okay, good. We've had a lot of people talk about making plans and how important it is, and I think Brad could chime in here with me on this as well, is that, it doesn't have to be, I think one of the things that Mickey Shields said to us is it doesn't have to be a complicated plan, but any plan is a good plan.
Yeah. You need some framework to discuss to or to make decisions from, and just establish some kind of a plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was really great advice from Mickey. And Tom, it's interesting you picked that up because we have talked about that a lot on here, because it is really good government to make sure that you have some sort of a plan. But I do think that it can be overwhelming sometimes for people. As a whole city council, to think to yourself, oh, we have to have this complicated strategic plan that looks out over the next 30 years. And that's not necessarily what you need. You just got to have some sort of a framework that you can use to be able to have some goals for even just a year or 2 years out. And we in Dubuque use that to set our budget and do those things. So I do think that's a great one to pick from that particular episode, I would say.
All right.
I'll give you one more episode.
Please.
We don't have to go anywhere anymore. But I like Quinn Hartz. He was actually the mayor of the year last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was. But building bridges, and literally in his case, and I know the situation in Waterloo with building a bridge and having it highlighted in the downtown area, but lighting a bridge and making a big difference. Network connecting with all businesses and residents. I enjoy that message from Quentin, and part of it is probably the delivery that he does with that message, and so he well represented the group in Waterloo.
Yes, no, he had apparently, building that bridge made a huge difference. But that brings me to something I read about you, is you said nothing happens without collaboration, both in public and private partnerships, and not just collaboration, but collaboration with your council, with your residents. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy on collaboration and how is it working in Mount Vernon?
Well, whether it's collaboration or recognizing the value of relationships. Nothing happens with one vote. I mean, you are nothing without getting some collaboration from the community or from the council or whatever. And of course, in Mount Vernon, the mayor doesn't vote, so it's an interesting collaboration. But through my years in my working careers and with on the school board, I know the importance of good relationships, and it's kind of implied internally in cities having good relationships with your city staff and with your citizens. But I've come to learn more and more in the mayor's role about the importance of collaboration and partnerships with external partners. And in preparation for this show, I listed 6 or 8 organizations that I've dealt with outside of the scope of the city of Mount Vernon, but that I've had the advantage to work with these people, and I want to make sure I collaborate with them to help both parties substantially in the end. And I'll just give a couple here, but Lynn County Conservation. When I first ran for mayor, I didn't think there was a need to work with Lynn County Conservation. That's outside the boundaries of Mount Vernon, for God's sakes. But we're working on a trail system that will eventually loop into Cedar Rapids. And while Mount Vernon is working on our seedling half mile or so, we needed to connect with Lynn County Conservation to continue into Cedar Rapids. So I've been very involved with seeking grants from that organization and seeing how they're doing with land acquisition for their part of the trail. United Way of East Central Iowa, normally not a partner, somebody that we would deal with, but they have as one of their basic tenets is supportive daycare. And Mount Vernon has some issues with daycares, had some issues with being a daycare desert, but we collaborated with the United Way leadership and got some assistance with establishing a new daycare that opened 4 or 5 months ago. And that was a need that we're addressing, and hopefully we'll be able to keep that need reduced by having another daycare available for 73 kids in Mount Vernon.
I have to jump in.
That's too much.
Yeah, no, that's all good stuff. That's all good collaboration. And I just want to jump in because I have a personal story here. Okay. Mayor Cavanagh told me that when I was in Dubuque, I had to go visit the Field of Dreams. And I know that in Dubuque, you help support the Field of Dreams baseball field. So that's good regional partnership too. That's a great example, correct?
Absolutely. And for us, it's ECCOG, the East Central Iowa Commission of Governments or whatever, a kind of a consortium of, it's a nonprofit consortium that we work with that would do something like that. It's kind of like an area chamber of commerce. And I know Dyersville's got a strong economic development in that area, in the county and so on. But yeah, Field of Dreams. Nice to have.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. Well, I love this conversation. I want to talk a little bit more about it. And I'm glad you brought up the Field of Dreams collaboration because it's a really easy example, I think, Dave. And we've got a number of them in Dubuque, too. I know, we're a decent sized city here. We've talked about that a lot on the show, but we're also in a really rural area. So one of the things that we recognize is the need to be able to do that collaboration to really get things done. And I was just curious about that from your perspective. How big is Mount Vernon again, population-wise?
Our population is 4,527.
Okay. All right. So you're like right around that 4,000, 5,000 mark right there. And, I know you're right next to Lisbon and, you've got a little bit of a collaboration there between those two cities, of course, but you're on a main thoroughfare. I've driven through Mount Vernon countless times in my life as a University of Iowa student one time and going back and forth from Dubuque. I stayed within that 25 mile per hour speed limit every time, just so you know, right there going through downtown.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. But I've always noticed too, that it seems to me like Mount Vernon is a very thriving place. I mean, it just seems like I know you've got a college there, but I'd like to just hear a little bit more from you about how those partnerships work in a city your size and what they mean. I mean, could you get these things done? Could you have that level of vibrancy if you're not looking outside your own, county or city boundaries there?
Well, we're lucky to have our foundation is basically a 3-pronged with Cornell College representing 1,100 kids in our town. We've got a very strong school district that's a big character. That's kind of dictates the character of our community with our school district. And then the city governance and so on. And we meet, leadership from those three organizations meet on a monthly basis and collaborate and share information about more global things that may impact them, street work that's going to impact the school district and the travel patterns, or being along the Cornell College campus and so on. So we stay closely involved with those partners, with the legislative session that is in process right now. We have a lot of communications with the college about some possible legislation with regard to what the legislature wants to do with regard to possibly getting involved with development work that the schools have, the foundation of the schools, what their finances might be taxed and so on. So we're very concerned about that, and recognizing that the 2-year versus 4-year degrees, we need Cornell to be successful, and we need to keep them offering 4-year degrees and not having competition from our local community colleges. So
yeah, sure,
very strong partnerships, and we want to make sure that's maintained, and that all helps us with a vibrant uptown area. We need those businesses to survive and thrive, and we enjoy that relationship.
Well, let me switch topics on you. Let's talk about something I did a little bit of research about Mount Vernon, and you seem to be doing a lot of work on traffic and on roads. I guess you've got a new 3-year highway project or a highway improvement project. How is the traffic, and how are you dealing with the traffic? And how do you explain to residents that the inconvenience today is going to pay off 3 years from now?
Yeah, that's one that's been kicked down the road a few years, but we're manning up here and facing the music here, and we're officially on the DOT calendar. Highway 1 through Mount Vernon, north-south arterial, is going to be worked on starting next summer. And it's still debatable whether it's going to be a 2-year project or a 1-summer project. But that will definitely impact our traffic patterns, and that'll also impact our businesses in our uptown area. But Mount Vernon is a city. We paid for the engineering for that project, but the DOT is going to do the project and finance the project. So we're grateful for that. So we're partnering with the Department of Transportation there in a big way. And we'll need to establish some alternative routes as that happens. We also have some street work planning on another end of town, which is another north-south arterial, which we can't do at the same time. You don't want to knock out your 2 major north-south arterials there. So that's getting backed up a little bit. But we also have a streetscape project planned for our uptown area, which will involve the closing of our main east-west street for a while this new street work is being done. And this gets down deep into the ground with infrastructure and so on. So it's going to be a challenge to time them all appropriately and have the least impact hopefully on businesses and the travelers that come through town. They'll take some magic.
And Brad is nodding his head as you're talking about all this. Yeah. I'll ask both you mayors this. As a non-mayor, I sit in traffic and you just get annoyed. Like, why is all this construction going on? And I want to ask you both, how do you manage a construction project where you're going to inconvenience people? And how do you sell that? Whoever wants to jump in first.
Face the music. I mean, do the communication as much as you can and as soon as you can, and let people know this will be tough. And there will be blood, sweat, and tears over this project. And don't sugarcoat it. I mean, don't say it's going to be a 3-month project and it's not going to be 3 months or whatever. Just talk to the individuals on their territory, go to their stores, their shops, and so on, and say, this process is, we've heard about it in the paper. It's going to start getting real here next summer, and it's probably going to affect us X number of months. And we're going to try to make it as comfortable as possible, but there will be pain.
Yeah, that's our. We actually had a few years ago had a situation in Dubuque where we had to work on a major street with a lot of businesses on it, where parking was already complicated and getting to the place was already difficult. And one of the things we learned in that process is the over communicating is so much more important. But then over communicating with the right messenger too. So working with the Chamber of Commerce or working with our Economic Development Corporation to be able to have those discussions. Some of these places for us have a neighborhood association of active residents who are really involved, and working with those groups to specifically talk to them about what it's going to mean. That's a really important part of those major projects like that.
Mount Vernon's a Main Street community as well, so we've got an active community development group. So that's our economic development driver in our community. But yes, over communicate and don't sugarcoat it. It's going to be tough, and hope it doesn't happen in election year.
Yeah, and it might. Yep. Yeah.
So I want to quote you here. I read about you in Cityscape magazine. It says, Listen as much as you speak.
Listen twice as much as you speak.
Listen, sorry, I got it wrong. Listen twice as much as you speak. Wow.
Third time's a charm, Dave.
Explain that.
As a guy and as a mayor, you think you've got all the right answers. And you frequently, I find myself explaining something before I understand really what is being talked about. Respect the value of silence. Silence says something. So listen twice as much as what you speak. You don't get in trouble for listening, number one, as compared to speaking, where you could get into trouble. But as I get older, I recognize that I need to not be formulating answers when I should be listening to a discussion. Let it play out, listen empathically, and make sure that you understand what the issue is, and be able to respond in as concise but accurate and truthful way as possible. I mean, keep the BS to a minimum. Yeah.
Well, Brad was listening very closely, but mayors, is it hard sometimes when someone is talking to just like shut up and listen?
Public comment section at a meeting. Yeah. If your philosophy is to not, debate at a public comment time of the meeting, but it's hard to not butt in and say, well, we got an answer for that, or we're working on this or whatever. But
what's funny though, I actually find myself thinking about this. I was thinking about it last night. We had a meeting talking about our property tax levy, our proposal for that, and actually had a lot of public input at the meeting and also leading up to it. So that's a good thing. And I found myself thinking that, and I do this a lot at these meetings, I appreciate how they're set up. I appreciate that we can't have a debate right there on the floor with somebody and get into a shouting match. For one, it really leads to a much more civil atmosphere, I think, to be able to say, this is your time to speak, and I want to listen to you say this. And I try as mayor, because you're in the chair role in those meetings, I try to make sure that I'm giving people plenty of time to be able to provide that feedback. And even, if nobody's getting up and saying anything else, waiting a beat before you move along and actually bring it back to the council, let people know this is your last chance to talk in this meeting. I think it's really important to be able to do that. And I've never thought about it in terms of you can't get in trouble when you're listening. That's a really interesting quote you just had right there, Tom. And I'm thinking about that one still. But I love the original quote that Dave mentioned here. I mean, it absolutely is true. You should be listening twice as much as you speak. And I do think it's a really important role that we have.
I wanted to ask you about a couple of things that are coming up in Mount Vernon. Tell me about Chalk the Walk in May. What is this thing?
Mount Vernon, about 20 years ago or so, as we're kind of identifying what our presence is going to be in the community.
Yes.
Establish this festival. It's basically chalk art on 3 streets in Mount Vernon, 3 blocks of our streets. So we close it up for this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there's like 180 10 by 10 squares that you can chalk and put up, draw your whatever you want to draw. There's an intersection, which is a pretty big intersection now, that has a group art on it. It is just kind of a neat experience. It's weather dependent, obviously, but
that could have a rate out. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's all chalk. It's all chalk drawings, and it's all. How long does it last?
As long
as it doesn't rain.
On it, so it's until it's like a week or two. If there's no rain on it, the traffic will wear off eventually.
Okay.
But there's a theme each year. This year, it's an artist whose name I don't have in front of me, but it's Lady Liberty is the style, and it's in collaboration with the 250th anniversary of the country. And it's going to be my nomination to the League of Cities Decorate City Hall type of thing, contest that's going to be happening.
Oh, cool. Good idea.
I'm going to contribute. Anybody can decorate City Hall. We're decorating all our main streets here, 3 blocks worth of Main Street. But it's it goes back to the concept when you talk about economic development and tourism of the third place. What are the third place in your life? I mean, most people have a home place, a workplace, but where's that third place? Is it where do you go to relax, to have a good time, to settle down? Some people it's a bar, some it's a biking or whatever. But Mount Vernon wants to be that third place for the residents of Lynn County. People in Cedar Rapids, not much going on this weekend. What do I want to do? Oh, let's bike to Mount Vernon, or let's go to walk the main street of Mount Vernon, and or go to a festival in Mount Vernon. So we're looking to be that third piece in people's lives for citizens, not only that are in Mount Vernon, but also in the nearby metropolitan areas.
To that end, you've also got something I read about called the Hello Summer Kickoff. So this is a business program you got going?
Right. It's part of a Shop Local program that we run several times during the year. There's usually cards that we tabulate how much sales could happen locally and so on. But it's we recognize we need a strong uptown business climate, and it's tough to be an independent operator on a niche business and on a main street in the small town of Mount Vernon, like Mount Vernon. So and we want to do things that we can get people into town from near and far, and give them a good experience with what is it involved with Cornell events or school events, but to show off our downtown area and help them economically, which is possible.
Well, I read about you. You must be doing something right. You just won your third election as mayor, and Mayor Cavanagh is about to get very jealous. I read that you won with 83% of the vote.
Yeah.
So you must be doing something right.
It was an interesting election, I'll tell you that, gentlemen. And that was my 14th election. And philosophically,
yes,
you may not agree with this, but philosophically, in a small town, I don't do yard signs. And you probably can't do this in Dubuque.
I wasn't able to pull that off in Dubuque, no.
Because, and it comes down to the statement that I think we have a very intelligent electorate here, very intelligent citizens here, and they recognize that 4 weeks of yard signs, balance that against 4 years, however many years of actually doing the job and having good service and governance to the community. Which one balances more? I mean, I'm not going to be able to change anybody's mind by putting up yard signs on my behalf. I've already been working on that, developing that yard sign concept for the previous however many years I've been in service. So that's a philosophical thing. Some people may agree with this, some may not, but it's served me well through 14 elections now. So
all right, good.
Not cheaper too.
We have a couple of questions we like to ask everybody. These are our leading Iowa questions. We talk about your true Iowa thoughts. I start with the first one. So tell me, what makes Mount Vernon a true Iowa city?
A very engaged, friendly citizenry. We have a lot of citizens that want to do good things for the community, for the school district, that support Cornell. And we just have a friendly downtown area, very business focused, very welcoming community with our festivals and with our businesses. So just a very engaged, friendly citizenry. That's what I'd say.
That's great. So what does good government look like in Mount Vernon, in your opinion?
Not having to be the headlines in a negative way in your local newspapers. Keeping things in perspective, not overreacting, not needing to be the last person to talk. Being comfortable with the fact that no is a sentence. And sometimes you have to have that conversation where the answer is no and be able to walk away from it. For many years, I did not do that. I would say no, but then I'd give explanation on and on and on and on. But at some point, sometimes you just have to say no is a complete sentence. And that's the end of the conversation.
So tell me about a good government project you've been able to get off the ground in your 3 terms as mayor. What are you proud of?
Well, I am proud of this trail development that we're working on. About 97 years ago, there was a rail line from in Cedar Rapids through Lane County to Mount Vernon and Lisbon that was taken out. Change of economy, a lot of things changed at that time, but that rail line was taken out. Alliance still owns that infrastructure. In light of the upcoming 100-year anniversary, I wanted to take the initiative in Mount Vernon to establish our seedling mile. So we literally put in a quarter mile of trail that's in our community, and we hope to extend that another half a mile to the end of our city limits in the next couple of years. And then some people will say it's this Wieseler's trail to nowhere. But the idea is that it will connect with the county project. They've got like 11 miles of county property that they need to get the trail established on, and then it goes into Cedar Rapids. And whenever I see Councilman Van Orney, I ask her how she's doing with the Cedar Rapids end of the trail, and they're working on it. So
okay.
I keep on that. But that is something that I know that I will not see the end of that trail. I definitely won't see it as a mayor, and I'm not sure I may see it in my lifetime.
Oh, but, come on.
Well, we'll see. But I recognize trails as kind of a quality of life expectation now of citizens coming to Mount Vernon. It's economic development driver. People tell me that all the time. And even if we don't get to Cedar Rapids in my lifetime, we have options for heading off the trail and going into Palisades Park. And we've got a pathway with friendly property owners along that way. That if nothing else, we'll get that trail established, and that's going to be continuing for a long time. That trail will be out there for a long time. So I'm proud of taking the steps to get it started. And what's the quote about planting trees that whose shade you'll never sit under?
Oh,
and so
yeah.
on. But this is something that I want to work on, and I know that's going to be an economic driver for our uptown streets and businesses, and as our community as a whole, and add to the quality of life that Mount Vernon has. So that's
great.
So someday I might be able to take a bike from Mount Vernon all the way to Cedar Rapids on the trail. That's the plan.
And then connect that trail, and you can go up to Waterloo and south to West Branch and so on. So
you know what's great about that question that Dave just asked? You can tell that Dave is asking questions, planning for his future as an Iowa resident, and you can hear that in all these questions. So thanks for asking that question, Dave.
Thanks.
All right, you've talked about a lot of places, Mayor. So what is your favorite place in Mount Vernon?
This may give me some grief because I'm not picking their particular business, but I got to tell you that my wife and I want to just take a break for a while. We go to Fuel Coffee in Mount Vernon, and a well-established coffee shop. It's been there for a long time. It's a daughter and her mother, and Pat's probably in her 70s, 80s, bakes the scones and cupcakes and things like that for the show, and just having a coffee there. And I'm not a big coffee drinker. But I get the caramel macchiato or whatever. It's like dessert in a cup is what it is. So coffee drinkers will mock me for it because that's not really coffee. That's just a dessert. But you see so many people there, and it's just a great meeting place. Last 2 times I was there, I ran into a couple from Bellevue, Iowa. They're on their way to a trip to Arizona, but they made their first stop out of Bellevue in Mount Vernon for coffee. I mean, that's like an hour into the trip, and they're already taking a break here. But and then Cornell parents that I meet there.
Must be a good spot.
Yeah. So that's at the risk of I know maybe upsetting some other businesses in town. That's the one I would go to.
Hey, we got to have our favorite places. That's a good one, Tom. Thanks.
Well, Tom Wieseler, thank you. I hope you listen to the show and take notes. I know Brad was taking notes. I was keeping an eye on him the whole time. And good advice. We should all listen a little bit more, starting with me. So, gentlemen, thanks for coming on. Thanks, Tom. And as always, thanks to my co-host, Brad Cavanagh, the mayor of Dubuque. This is Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Take care.
Now that you've listened to Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities, make sure you listen to The Good Government Show, another show from Valley Park Productions. On The Good Government Show, I talk with mayors, commissioners, and leaders from across government about what works. We talk about what government means and how we can get the best out of government. So join me right here where you're listening now to The Good Government Show. That's our show. Thanks for listening. Join us again right here for the next episode of Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities. Make sure you like us and share us with your friends. Follow us on Facebook. Leading Iowa is a Valley Park production in association with the Iowa League of Cities. The show is executive produced by Katie Wheeler and Brad Cavanagh for the Iowa League of Cities. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are executive producers for Valley Park Productions. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic.